All right, here we go. Okay, so the last time we talked about off camera, we were talking about like compounding effect. This is something that you've recently started implementing into your life. It's something I've known about for a real long time, but it definitely took me a while to implement in my life. Um, so why don't you like explain how you found out about it, how compounding effect works, and how you've been implementing it gradually inside your life.
Well, it's a good thing to bring up actually, but for me, the compounding effect is something. It's something I knew of a while back from reading the book. I believe it's actually called The Compounding Effect, which talks about basically doing things and how what you're doing compounds over time and produces bigger results. But I knew it was important, but I never really applied it to my own life until recently. And that was actually from reading reading the book The Slight Edge, and then realizing how big of an effect even one small insignificant action, which in your mind could be insignificant because kind of like in the book The Slight Edge, it talks about, a lot of the time these things are easy to do, but they're also easy not to do.
Yeah.
So it's doing those little things that are easy to do and easy not to do on a consistent basis, that even though you're not noticing it as you're doing it, for me personally, has been making a huge difference in my life and actually many aspects of my life, both professional and business and just overall productivity.
Yeah, I think people just focus their vision on the end goal, which is fine because you need that to know which direction you're going. But if you're like so focused on the end goal, it's kind of hard to see like the tangible results that come each day. It's actually kind of impossible for some things. Like and there's like different books that talk about compounding in different ways. Like you could say like the book How to Make Your Bed, like get up and make your bed every single morning. That's definitely an insignificant task, but it's compounding because it gets you in a productive mode, kind of brainwashes you to get productive for the day. Like you get one task done, now it sets you up to finish the rest of the tasks. And if you continue doing that, um, those things that you finish every single day will build up.
Well,
Uh,
also, I was just gonna mention that similarly to what you're mentioning, like for instance, something as simple as making your bed every single morning, it's also building a habit, and your
yeah,
habits stack, and it creates an opportunity for you to habit stack, because sooner or later that seamless task of, let's just say making your bed, it becomes almost like something you do on autopilot, something you don't even think about. Like there's not much mental energy that's being exerted for you to force yourself to go and make your bed. It's something your brain will intuitively do because you're getting used to using those
yeah,
habits.
exactly. And I feel like a lot of people don't associate compounding with anything outside of like finances. Like I think it was Warren Buffett who said like interest is like the eighth wonder of the world or something. It's because it
Mhm.
compounds over time, but you can actually see it if you go into your account and check it every single day. You can see how it's compounding. With
Yeah.
anything else, like if you're working towards a goal, it's kind of impossible to see. Like if you're if you're trying to create a business or start a business and create a successful business, you're doing these tasks every day. You don't really know when you're gonna strike, that next relationship or that next client or next breakthrough in your business to reach where you want to go. You're just kind of doing things every single day, hoping that you're getting there, but you're not really seeing like tangible results. It might take a while, and I
Well,
think that's why a lot of people end up quitting before they. It's like that meme, right, with the guy like mining the diamonds. He's
Yeah.
like a couple inches away from hitting the diamonds, but he decides to walk back.
Well, it's also the kind of thing where I've come to realize this, and the only reason I've come to realize, in a sense, like what you're talking about with, like that meme with mining the diamonds, is a lot of the time you think you're like you are not even think you are working towards a bigger goal, and you're doing those day in and day in tasks or whatever the work that's required of you, in order to be able to accomplish and reach that goal. But for me at least, until I started like journaling and like really tracking the progress that I'm making, in my head, I saw growth or progress towards accomplishing a goal as being something linear. As in, like, like you take this one step, then you take the next step, and then you're like climbing up the ladder. But what I've realized is it really isn't linear. It's like it almost it follows more of a trajectory where it's like you take one step forward and two steps back, and that I think is essential to growth in itself. Because like if you think about it, from the example of, and this is how I actually realized it's I set a goal for myself to do, let's just say 100 push-ups in a row, and then I set milestones where I'm going to do 10, 20, 30, and so on. 10 was easy to hit. That's an easy goal, that I was able to knock that out of the park. But then going into 20 is where I really notice is like some days I'll be able to, let's just say 14. Then I'm able to do 16. Then I'm able to do 17. But then on the following day, for one reason or another, I'm only able to do 11. So it's like realizing that, you're making progress, but then you're also going to have times where you're going to have to, in a sense, like, you're not going to have that linear growth. It's not going to go, kind of like a ladder up. You're going to have a time where it comes down, but it's being able to see that in that perspective, that if you push through that, then you're able to hit your goal.
Yeah, you kind of have to reframe because they're like you're not always gonna have good days. Like, you're gonna have bad days too. Um, it's like that's exactly kind of what has happened with my jujitsu journey starting 3 months ago. Like, I walked into the gym, I didn't know anybody. I haven't done jujitsu in like 10 years, and like everyone in there has experience. So I was like nervous going, and like I kept going for like a month, but I have no idea if I'm learning fast or if I'm getting better or not because I keep getting my ass whooped inside the training room. But then, like, after a certain time period, if I didn't notice it, if I just focused on me getting my ass whooped and I didn't notice that, oh, I'm starting to be able to defend a little better against these guys who are higher belts than me.
Yeah.
Like tiny things. Like, oh, I'm able to escape this guy's submission. Like tiny stuff like that. Instead of focusing on like trying to choke the dude out or like strangle him and try to get the submission win. Like instead I like looked at like the smaller details.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm like defending well. I'm able to escape. I'm able to retain my guard. Like smaller steps in between the actual
But
thing.
you're also focusing on just like, in a sense, one step, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Uh just like focusing instead of on the end result, whatever that may be, like winning the actual match, like just focusing on getting actually better. Uh, but it's also good to have like those landmarks in between.
The milestones. Yeah.
Yeah, just so you can, just so you know, like it'll give you like validation that all right, you're actually progressing and
Yeah.
on the right path. Um, Like those will come, but they don't come. They're few and far between. And I think people are so busy looking for those things that they don't notice like the smaller ones. Like we had our promotions yesterday, and I got a stripe on my white belt. I wasn't expecting that. Like at first the coach didn't even call my name to get a belt, and I was like, oh, all right, well, I guess I'm not getting a belt today. And then he was like, Kevin, come up here. I forgot. And then he called me up again to get a stripe. And out of the people who got a stripe, like I've been there the least amount of time. So that gives me, obviously it's cool and stuff, but like that gives me like validation that all right, maybe I'm doing like the right things here. Like you kind of need to see those things.
Yeah.
But
But
to focus on them, like now, like I can't just focus on getting like my next stripe or whatever. I have to like refocus myself on just back to my skills and just focusing on that. So that if
but
I just focus on the belt, like that may or may not come next time we do promotions. I don't know.
which actually brings up an important point, and something I wanted to ask is, do what do you think motivates you more? It's focusing on that next milestone that you want to hit, or actually truly loving jujitsu?
I think the journey is way more important. I think it'll differ um, between people because the milestone, I mean, that's not gonna. The goal may not be permanent. Like maybe you'll find a different path along the way. Like stuff happens in life. Like if I had a goal to build a certain business, maybe along the way I find a different business that I would rather do than the
But
original one.
but you gotta love the process. I guess that's what I'm trying to like get
Yeah, yeah,
to. Because if you're just focused after the result, which is not, I mean, for a lot of people, there's nothing wrong with that. I just think if you
right.
focus on really like the end result, which is like, let's just say the ultimate result is like for you, what is it in jiu-jitsu, a black belt?
Yeah,
Yeah.
essentially.
If you focus on that as being the end result, like once you get that, like what's the next thing? Like it, it's or like the milestones. Like if it's important to focus on the milestones, which is like, the next belt that you're gonna get. But in order for you to get there, I think you really have to enjoy what you're doing, which is, I think, why you probably were able to get, let's just say, in the shortest amount of time, get a belt and then get a stripe on your belt, is because you're actually enjoying what you're doing, which also means you're present and you're more engaged in what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Like I enjoy showing up to the gym and our training sessions. Like every day, obviously I know each time I go, I'm going to have bad days and good days. I still like that process of just showing up is what I focus on. Like the
Yeah,
belts are cool, but like it's not my main focus. Like this is something I had to learn the hard way with like all the businesses that I've tried in the past that didn't come anywhere close to what we set our goals on. I was so focused on building the 7-figure business when we were having trouble getting it to make like 1,000 a month.
hmm
So like refocusing on the climb or the actual journey itself. And that's why they say like the journey is the destination. Like that's
yeah.
that famous saying. And I think if you just focus on that, like you'll be a lot happier. Because if you're always focused on the end goal, whatever that is, like it's your brain is gonna want it to be there each day you wake up. And each day when it's not there, you're kind of putting yourself in like a state of lack.
Yeah.
So if you focus on the journey itself, you really don't need anything outside of that
That's kind
because
of the thing that I also noticed for myself is making the money or hitting like a monetary goal that you have in your head, but not caring about not really being like loving what you do is only going to result in you hitting, hopefully, or hitting like whatever, like a monetary milestone that you have in your head, but it's going to make it so much harder to build on that, or continue on to, like you said, like for instance, like building a 7-figure business, because if you don't love the work, and if you don't love what you're doing, it becomes very, I mean, it becomes very it becomes increasingly more difficult to put in the time and the effort that's needed in order to grow something to that kind of level.
Yeah, and it's funny because people do build multi 7-figure businesses and they hate it, which is the funny part because it happens
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Um, the thing is, if money is your end goal, then yeah, I mean you're winning your game. But also of those people that I know who have been able to do that, build successful businesses, but don't really enjoy their business, they're also not very happy people. Like
Yeah.
they've gone through divorces, they have like trouble at home. Anything outside of business is kind of a wreck in their life, and they're
Yeah.
kind of miserable. And I mean, for me personally, happiness is the end goal. Happiness and peace. Whatever that may look like, it may or may not come with a successful business, but that is my end goal. I think at the end of the day, everyone is searching for a form of happiness and peace. Some people think that money will be able to solve that. It may or may not for them. I don't know. I just don't believe that it'll do that for me.
Yeah.
Just from what I've seen outside of in other entrepreneurs and also within my own family too. Family members focused on money, and I just see the way they live, how they act, and stuff like that, and that doesn't really appeal to me. But if that's if that works for them, cool. This is not the thing for me.
It kind of
Like,
makes me think that, like, it's the saying where, like, money amplifies things, where it's
yeah,
like it amplifies you as a person, and it also amplifies the issues that, like, if you have issues, it amplifies the issues that you have. So if you're a good person, and you know whatever that may be, that will get amplified. But if you have certain like issues with money, those issues get amplified. If you're a terrible person, that also gets amplified.
yeah, exactly. And the thing is, like, money doesn't discriminate. Like, if like if you're a good person, doesn't mean you're gonna make money. Like, like if you're a bad person, doesn't mean you're not gonna make money either. Otherwise, like, there wouldn't be any rich drug dealers. So
Honestly, I think sometimes it's easier to make money you aren't when you are maybe like a bad person, when you don't have a clear
yeah,
conscience.
exactly. But to your point, like, when if you're doing something horrible, if you're like scamming people, when you get more money, what do those people usually do? It's not like they go around and do something good with it. They do more of the same bad shit with it. And
Yeah.
like people that are hoping that money will solve their maybe like internal issues. Like if someone says like if they make a certain amount of money, they'll be a confident person. That's probably not going to be the case.
Yeah.
It might give them a false sense of confidence, but the underlying issues will manifest itself eventually if that person was able to make that money. For
Yeah.
example, uh if they're like if they need the money to be confident, they once they make the money, they might start splurging on things like cars, like very materialistic things to kind of build on that false sense of confidence and build on that facade.
Hmm.
But internally, if they sit with themselves, they know that these things aren't they probably won't feel what they thought they would feel when they thought they got have all this money and all these things. They probably feel more or less the same way as they did before they got the money. They just now have all these things.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I guess if money isn't important, like what are you focused on? Because money is important to me, but
No,
I
no,
guess
it's
it's like
important to
just
me,
trying to
obviously.
figure out like what your guiding star is, right?
Yeah, of course, money is important to me. Like that's you need it to live. My thing is I'm focused on finding things that'll give me peace and like happiness on the inside. Um, Money will definitely be a part of it because it'll give you security. But to make, I mean, when we first started doing like entrepreneurial stuff, I had like grandiose visions of making like hundreds of millions of dollars. But then as I got older, I was like, what do I need all that money for?
Yeah.
Like, what am I gonna do with all that? So if I find like if I set up my life in a way where I'm living in complete peace and happiness, I don't know what my financial status will look like. I prefer it to be in a good place, but as long as I'm happy doing something I love and it gives me peace and it's good for my soul, um, that's all that matters. It's not worth it to me to chase an opportunity to make a whole bunch of money in it, but
Yeah.
also dislike what I'm doing each time I go out and do it.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that.
Because otherwise, I mean, if money was that important to me, I would go and be a pharmacist right now. Like that's an easy way to six figures for me right now. But I would rather spend that time that I would have spent behind a counter at the pharmacy trying to build things that are cool to me, like different types of businesses, projects like this, things of that nature.
Yeah, but do you think you found the thing that you're like truly passionate about? Is this the thing that like I guess it gets you up in the morning? Is building those businesses and working on projects?
I don't know if it's the businesses I'm specifically working on now, but definitely working on building like cool things, like turning ideas into reality. Definitely for sure.
Hmm.
Um, Specifically, what type of business? I don't. I don't think I have the answer to that yet. It may be the ones that I'm working on now, or it may not be. Like maybe I'll find a different opportunity sometime in the future that I can pivot to that makes more sense. Which is why I kind of look at these businesses now without a lot of attachment to it, just because of past experiences that I had a huge attachment to all the businesses I had, and when they didn't come to fruition or they failed, like that stung. So
Yeah.
I kind of just look at these things with as little attachment as possible. Um, and it's not that I don't care about them. Obviously, I'm working hard to make them successful, but it's more of the lines of if it doesn't work out, that's cool. I can find something else. And if it does, that's also cool.
A lot of it is also kind of like just it kind of makes me think of like a high school science class where it's just like a big experiment. So with everything you do, like for instance, like whether it be a business or things in like in your personal life, it's a lot of just like experimenting and figuring out what works, what doesn't work, and then just trying to like build on top of that. That's the other thing that I really realized too is aside from like the business or stuff that you're working on, it's also important to keep in mind like what who who are you becoming from the work that you are doing? So like what skills are you gaining? What kind of person are you becoming that you could take with you then to the next project and in a sense like stack on that and be able to leverage that into whatever else that you do.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think as you reach certain milestones and bigger milestones in your life, your identity does change a little bit, whether you notice it or not. Because definitely the person I am now is definitely not the same person that I was when I first started. So there's definitely, even though uh, the businesses have failed, it doesn't mean that you yourself has failed unless you look at it that way. Because the way I look at it is, even if I don't succeed as an entrepreneur, I still won. I've still won because the person I became so far, like the person sitting here right now speaking into the camera, is the person I wish I was when I was in college. So now I am that person. Uh, and now I get to create a new identity for myself to look forward to in my quote unquote future self. And I can look back and say that the person sitting here wishes I was the person in the future. So I think people, that goes back to what we were saying earlier. They're focused on like the things outside of themselves that they miss the most important part, which is like the changes that are happening to you. Because I forgot who said this, but someone said like there's no such thing as wasted work. It either works on you or it works for you,
Yeah,
or it does both.
I agree. Yeah, the other thing too is we spend so much time living either in the past or in the future that it's sometimes difficult to like realize like or be realize how to what's happening in the present. It's actually kind of funny, kind of you look back on like some of the hardest things you've done or like things that might be terrible in the present, like memory, like terrible things that are happening in your life, and then you look back at it and you just like almost kind of like laugh and smile at it because it's like wow, like like you see it from so much different of a perspective than you would when you're in the in the struggle in a sense.
Yeah, for sure. Um, what was I gonna say? Like when I first read like The Power Now and like about the present moment, where the guy like Eckhart Tolle talks about um like all your life is happening in the now, and you have no problems. They're just situations that you have to deal with, and like all the thoughts in your brain, they're not real. Like they're not you. They're just those are just thoughts that are happening to you. And I was like, what is this guy talking about? Like, is this guy like crazy? Like, what is this guy talking? Like, what does this guy mean? I don't have any problems. But if you like keep an open mind to try to understand it, what you're saying is absolutely true, because it's only a problem because you look at it from that frame of mind.
Yeah,
But in reality, like if you're so worried about the past and the future, you're going to create problems for yourself, because your brain is going to find evidence either in the past that you're not going to be able to do something, or it's going to be anxious of the future that whatever you're going towards isn't going to come your way. But if you stay in the present and not focus on the past or the future, then you only have like the next step in front of you and the next step after that. Like you don't have to deal with like the evidence from the past or like the anxiety from the future. It's like life is happening now, and you really don't have any problems when it
yeah.
comes into the present moment.
I know for
But
myself.
it's easier said than done, obviously.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people, unless you meditate a lot, it's real hard to stay in the present moment for sure.
Yeah. I know for myself, it's like I sometimes could get overwhelmed with all the different things that I have to do and just have a difficulty like figuring out like what to prioritize, what to work on, what not to work on, when to work on things, and then like wanting to work on everything at the same time because I'm like in my head I'm like I need to get everything done. But then just being able to step away from things and kind of, for me at least, like I've built out these kind of like mental frameworks where I try to see things from a bigger point of view, where I almost like step away and just realize, and this is also kind of like from meditation too, where it's like the vastness of the universe and how like if you really think about it, the vastness of the universe in the grand scheme of things, like Earth is like a blip. Like if and then if you go to a more granular level, it's like you practically don't even exist. So it's like once you, for me at least, it's like once I realize how everything is like meaningless, but the only reason it has meaning is because I choose to give it meaning. So the way I choose to look at things, or whether I let things bother me, or whether I let things overwhelm me, is all up to me. And it just having that perspective just has really allowed me to realize that as much as I think all of these things really matter, at the same time they all don't matter at the same time. And
Yeah.
it's just and then also just picking the first thing to do, and just like it doesn't matter, like for me at least, it's like it doesn't matter where I start or what I work on. It's just the most important thing is that I take the first step and move in the right direction, and then everything else will just fall into place.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny because one of my clients has like a very nihilistic view on life like that too. Like people say like what's it called? That you should live life to the best of your abilities so you don't have any regrets on your deathbed and stuff like that. But he views it from kind of your point of view, a nihilistic way where like in like a million years the sun is going to burn out and you're just an insignificant being on a floating rock in
Yeah.
space, and none of it is gonna matter, and no one's gonna remember you anyway. So you may as well like treasure and live each moment to the fullest.
Well, you don't even have to really like even go that far. Like if you think about it, probably 100, I mean, 1,000 years from now or whatever, or maybe even 500 years from now, nobody will even know, even have an idea of that you even existed.
Right.
Like literally nobody, unless you're in some kind of history book or something. Like there will be. It's almost like you never even existed.
Yeah, exactly.
And to be
Exactly.
worried about, and I think for a lot of people, and I know for me too, it's like being worried about the opinions of others, or what others are going to think, or if I'm doing the right thing, or if I'm doing the wrong thing, or if I should be doing something else. It's almost like, when I really think about it, it's almost stupid, because none of it will freaking matter. Whether I made the right decision or the wrong decision, whether whatever the person, whoever's opinion it is, it's like none of that shit will matter.
Yeah, it's funny because I have a friend who wants to do some dance classes, but he hasn't gone out to do it. Um, and he was talking about it right around the same time I was talking about doing jujitsu, and we kind of made a little deal. I was like, I'll take my first jujitsu class, but you have to take your first dance class. And that that was like 3 months ago. And we didn't talk for a while until like this week. Because I messaged him about something and I saw like he was in Japan or something like that. And I was asking him about it. And he was like, and I was like, "Oh, are you taking your dance classes yet?" And he's like, "No, I have to go do it still." And he was like, "Are you still doing jujitsu?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've been doing it for since we last talked." And I was telling him, I was like, "I get it. Like, you don't want to look like a fool, get embarrassed, and stuff like that." I felt the same exact way. Like everyone is once you start at something. Like we all have to start somewhere. And I heard this great like insight from Neil Strauss, the guy who wrote the game. He says everyone thinks that uh, everyone is so worried about people judging them or not giving them validation, when the reality is the people that you think that are judging you, they're worried about you judging them and not giving them validation.
Yeah,
So if you really want to connect with people, the secret is you give others validation and not judge them because they're worried about the exact same thing that you are.
it's like everybody's living in their own world, and living in their own world, experiencing a lot of the same things, but also thinking that it's like it's all about them and it's all around them, when in reality every single person is kind of going through the same thing and then thinking the same things.
Yeah, they are. Like, it was funny. One of my clients, it was his birthday a couple days ago, but he turned 31. And he said at he thought at the age that he's at now, when he was younger, he would have all the answers to everything in life. But he realized that he has more questions now more than ever about life. And like, I love the way he described it. He was like, I feel like I'm cosplaying as an adult and someone is going to like tear off my mask and realize that this guy has no idea what the hell he's doing in life. But I think that's the same for mostly everybody. And that and they're kind of ashamed of it. Honestly, in my opinion, people who think they have all the answers, those are the most clueless people out there. Like the people who have questions and are searching for answers, like that is, I think, if you're in that place, you're in the right place.
It's kind of the beauty of life too, is like which is also part of kind of like the human psyche, which is like the search for meaning, the search for something beyond yourself, and the search for whatever those answers might be. Because everybody has different questions that they're looking to get answered. But it's just like that constant search for meaning and then trying to give things meaning and understand things, which is which makes things interesting.
Yeah. And I think like on top of searching for meaning, like all the feelings that people are searching for, like happiness, love, abundance, peace, all that stuff. People are looking outside of themselves to try and find that. They think it's behind like a certain accomplishment, a certain status in life, when in reality, it's it's within yourself. Like you already have all that within you. You just have to pull it out. Um, and that brings up like my favorite quote of all time from Miyamoto Musashi. Like there's nothing outside yourself that can ever enable you to be smarter, richer, quicker, better, or faster. Everything exists. Everything is within. Seek nothing outside of yourself. Like that it took me a while to really understand that too, because for the longest time I was like, well, if I make X amount of money and I'm living in this certain place, then I will be quote unquote successful in my own head. When in reality, successful, if I give it a different definition, like maybe if I pull it back to success being I'm able to pursue things that I want to pursue, then I'm already successful. Like, I don't need to have those those external things that I thought about. Um, because I've already seen that those external things don't necessarily quantify or qualify for the underlying things that I'm really searching for, which is happiness and peace.
Yeah. It you know what it comes down to, in my opinion, it's like the mental frameworks that you have in your head of what success is and what it means to accomplish something, or what is going to make you happy, which also it's something I've real something just like a step beyond that I've realized is, realistically speaking, every single one of us has the tools to be successful. The only problem is the way the only problem is the mental limitations that we put on ourselves. Because like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist in order to build a company and have a business, but it's the difference of the person who does it, how they view limitations, and versus the person who doesn't do it. Because you could acquire the same tools, you could acquire the same skills, the same knowledge that person does, but it's all about what you do with that. In order for you to be able to do something with that and make it happen, all requires you to view things in a particular manner, or the way that person who's been able to make it and become successful views it.
Yeah, there's I actually thought about this recently. Um like what those limitations are. And I think it comes down to like the main three things I think from my observation are like identity, the stories you tell yourself, and then different definitions. For example, like definition of success that we just talked about, or like definition of love, or what definition of happiness is. And then there's stories you tell yourself where it's like, oh, maybe I failed this in the past. Probably means I can't do this again. Or like no one in my family has ever done this and I'm not worthy of doing this, so I can't do that. And then there's identity, where I think that's the hardest one to get over, because that's like a part of your ego, basically. One of my clients just retired, and he said a good piece about this. Like his whole life, he's been a fighter, right? And when he retired, you're no longer a fighter. I mean, you could fight in his definition. Like he gives it a reframe. He could fight in other aspects of his life now, like in business. But to go in and punch people in the face for a living, that part of his life is over. So he had to let that go in order to move on to the next phase of his life. Uh, and when he came to that realization, like he started crying. And this is a guy that is like a stoic, tough dude, but he had to let go of his identity that he's been attached to for so long, pretty much his entire life. But he knew he had to do that to move on to this next phase of his life. And like I think that's why you see like fighters fighting like way past their prime, uh, because they can't detach from that identity itself. And it's hard for them to be able to move on and build a different identity and try to do something else because it's something that like is a part of them and they have to let that go, which is like extremely difficult and painful for a lot of people.
But you know what it is? And this just made me think of something not fighting related, but it made me think of a boss that I had when I was doing sales. And one of the things that he always called, like, all the salespeople, called them warriors. Because
Yeah.
it made me think of this because it just realizing you don't necessarily have to reframe, like, you don't have to give up your identity. You could just reframe it. Because in sales, just because I call myself, cause I'm called a warrior or consider myself a warrior, doesn't mean that I'm going to battle and, I'm whipping
Yeah.
out a katana or something.
Yeah.
But in the same sense, you are going to war. You are going out there, putting yourself out there to be vulnerable, and in order to put food on the table, put a deal together, whatever it is. So being a fighter or being let's just say a warrior, it's not necessarily or a mentality or how you see yourself that you have to give up, but it could be something that you reframe into other areas of your life or like the next part of your life.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Like, I think I'm mostly a creative person. That doesn't mean like, I mean, I like writing stories and stuff, but it doesn't mean that I have to be creative in just fiction. Like, I could be creative in other aspects of my life when it comes to my profession or in business. It doesn't need to be like relegated to just writing stories and doing stuff like that. And on the same token, like there are people that wish they were creative, but the reality is anyone can be creative. Um,
It
the
goes back
people
to
that
the mental frameworks and like the limitations that you put on yourself. It's like
yeah,
telling yourself,
exactly.
I'm not creative, so that means I'm
Yeah,
not.
I'm not creative is a definition they've attached to their identity, which is probably not true because they're probably creative in whatever they're doing. They just assign creativity to like more artistic things. But they could easily like they could easily transform into that too if they allow themselves to and kind of let go of the definition of them not being creative because everyone is creative.
It's actually kind of interesting how that works. And for the longest time, I used to tell myself I'm bad at math. Like math is not my thing. And then just like one day, it's just like decided to change that framework and like actually think or consider as myself as being good at it, good at math. And my performance drastically changed in the right direction just by employing that framework.
Yeah, like you might not be bad at math, you might not like it. Like I don't really like math. I'm definitely like and when it comes to like basic elementary algebra and stuff like that, I'm pretty good at it. Anything outside of that, don't ask me. like, but like you can learn. I mean, you can get good at math,
Yeah, just I
but
mean, just like anything else.
yeah, you just might not like it,
Yeah.
which is why most people probably assume that just because they don't like it, they must not be good at it.
Well, I
But you can
think liking
easily,
and liking and being good at something go very hand in hand because if you're good at something, you tend to like it.
but you can also get good at something you don't like, which is
I can
the
relate to that.
majority of people, honestly,
Yeah.
working their jobs,
Yeah.
which is the sad part. um, and something that people don't realize because, like, some things that they do like or want to pursue, if they just realize that they got good at something that they didn't like, imagine what they would have, how far they could go if they just put some of the effort into starting some of the things that they did actually like.
I think that also goes in hand, like it. It's like having the guiding north star of what you want out of life. Because I know for myself, it's like chasing the money or trying to make like optimizing for earning, optimizing for making the most money possible. It makes you almost kind of like jump to the next best thing. So you're learning skills and you're learning a variety of skills, but like you're not necessarily optimizing for this what you like and what you do best.
Yeah, it's funny uh, because when it comes to like money, specifically in business, people just assume that like the more you make, like if you're not happy making a certain amount, you just need to make more. Like that's the quote unquote logical thought process that most people come to. I mean, you're a realtor, so you every check you get is pretty large lump sum of a lump sum, right? And then
Yeah,
the
but you know what?
project that I've done,
I was just gonna mention, after a certain amount, the amount of happiness that you get from the amount you earn diminishes over time, and there comes a point where the money no longer makes you happy. Yes, I never
yeah,
thought that
you're
would
happy.
actually be a thing. Actually, like looking back at things, I never thought that that could actually be a thing where if I made more money, I wouldn't be happier. I always visualized it where if I
Yeah,
had
same.
more money, I would be happier. I'd be able to buy more of the things that I want to do. But then it's like you buy more of the things that you want. You buy the house, you buy the car, you buy whatever you want, and then it's like what next thing do I buy? Because like that happiness is so fleeting.
Yeah, especially if you don't like what you're doing, like
Yeah,
because then it's like once that dopamine calms down, you're like, damn, well, I have to deal with all these shitty clients again,
exactly.
blah blah blah, just to earn this again, and then it becomes like a cycle, and then like honestly, for you, like when you first got like a big real estate check, how how long did that happiness actually last for you?
So the first one, the happiness lasted probably like 2 3 days. But here's the difference. The last one, the happiness probably didn't even last a couple of hours.
Exactly. That's crazy, right? Because like if you
Yeah,
think about all the fucking time you spent to earn that for like a
yeah.
couple days or hours of happiness, it's crazy. Because that's the thing I realized. Like I cut a deal with an NBA team. This was a deal I was chasing the entire summer, basically for months. And when it finally got green lighted and they wired us $50,000, I was happy. I was like journaling every single night. I was like, oh, this was the goal. And then once I finally got there, like honestly, the money didn't even mean anything to me. When I saw it, I just looked at it as like a number in the account, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool."
Yeah.
And then the next day, I was like, "Well, damn, that didn't last very long." And then my thought process, I was like, maybe the goal wasn't big enough, so now I need to like get even bigger than this. And I pivoted away, and I managed to get deals that accumulated to way bigger than that. But same thing, like it when the money got wired into our account, or when I saw the money on my Stripe account, or saw the Shopify dings come up on my phone, it didn't really mean anything after a while. And I was like, well, this kind of sucks because I spent like so much mental energy
Mm-hmm.
like focusing on this, and now I'm like numb to all this now. So what's wrong here?
Yeah, yeah. It's something that I thought about too, and it's what I've realized is just you're optimizing for the wrong thing, and because you're optimizing for the earning, in a sense, that's your target. So i- the dopamine, like the dopamine or like the reward that you feel comes from making the money, but it doesn't come from doing the work, and that's the
Yeah.
hardest thing. Because when when you like, at least for me, it's like when you don't love doing the work, but you're just doing it to make the money, sooner or later, because like you kind of start getting diminishing returns from the amount of happiness the money brings you. You kind of skew to the spectrum where there's so many more things you dislike because you didn't like the work to start with, and so little of the stuff that you do like because the amount of joy that that money brings you is so much less with time, with with every single time you get a check.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously. Like I think about that now, actually, as part of like my gratitude practice. And I was like, even though I'm not making the amount of money I wish to be making, I could be at like a CVS or a Walgreens right now making six figures, but I would have to be working like 80 hours a week and getting paid 40 and having to deal with all these like crazy people, and then the corporation breathing down your back for not doing things right or not doing things fast enough. These are all things I've seen working as an intern or tech at those places. And yeah, I mean, I could have saved a bunch of money and maybe gone on a couple of vacations a month, like a year. But then the majority of my time is I'd have to be miserable.
Yeah.
So that to me is not that's not really worth it to me at least. And I think a lot of people they're like, I'll save up this amount of money and then I'll go do my own thing. Like I wonder how many people actually go out and do that because your mind kind of gets comfortable after a while, and like it's hard to like leave something that you found so much security in.
It's secure. Well, it's two things. It's security and from a financial point of view, but then it's a security from a comfort point of view, which is like what you know. So it's kind of like the because you're getting good at something you don't like doing, it's then like once you realize or like once you have that epiphany, it's like how do because and especially if you spend a lot of time doing it, it's like do I change to something, do I make a change or do I keep going, or even is it worth making a change at this point?
Yeah, I thought about that. I remember when I was doing my rotations in pharmacy school, I was on I was assigned to um this medical team that had a doctor, some resident doctors and whatnot. I was like the pharmacy. There's a pharmacist on there, and I was just the intern following around. I remember one of the residents. I left the day before and came back at 6 in the morning, and that same resident was there wearing the same clothes. And I was like, "Would you run out of clothes to wear?" And he was like, "No, I've been here since yesterday." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, we do 24-hour, sometimes 48-hour shifts." And I was like, "Holy crap." But I'm looking at him and he looks miserable as hell. And I'm like, how many of these things can you do like before like you start hating your life? That's what I thought back then. Like this is before I knew anything about the stuff that we're talking about now. And it's like it's so funny because I'm like that kind of stuff like once you start realizing that you've done something that you didn't like for so long and you start realizing that you could have put that time into something else,
Yeah.
like I imagine that's probably a sad realization for some people and they just hide, try to escape from that. That's why they keep doing what they're doing.
Well, I know for me, because I'm kind of in a similar boat. It's like the mindset of like, all right, how do I start backpedaling in a sense, and then how do I start, optimizing for something that I actually do want to do and something that I like, and then it's like, how do I build off all the skills and experience that I've gained through the stuff that I've been doing? But it also goes back to the fact that it's like what you were saying, where the work is also working on you at the same time. So there are skills, and then there are certain things that you're able to carry with you to whatever you end up doing next. But it's also I feel like having the mindset of like it's never too late and it's never too early. It's if eh, you know it might seem like that in the moment, but then if you go 5 years from now, you're gonna think of it from the perspective like, if I had started 5 years ago, I would already be at the point that I want that I you know that I would want to be at now. So it's like that thing where it's like, when's the best time to start? Now. Like the best time to start is like once you realize that you need to make a change, or once you realize that you
Yeah.
need to do something differently.
Yeah, I try not to think about I wish I had started this earlier. 'Cause then, like I don't think those thoughts in general are very positive for me at least because like going back to jiu-jitsu, I walked into a jiu-jitsu academy at 18 and I just never kept up with it. I was just on and off with it. I mean, I'm 32 now. If I would have stayed consistent instead of being a white belt with one stripe, I'd be a black belt for sure. Over the if I stayed consistent with it over 14 years. So,
But if you
like
look at it from that perspective, it's very easy to get discouraged, because then you think of it from the perspective of lack, of
yeah,
like all
exactly.
the things that you're lacking or like insufficient in, and it's just like it's nothing positive is gonna come from that. Like
Yeah,
it's like the
exactly.
realization, like the past is not gonna change. The past is the past, and you don't know the future. The future is the future. Like whatever you think it may be, it may not be. So it's like you might as well just focus on the present moment and enjoy the present moment as if like like from like your jujitsu point of view, where it's as if you were just starting now and like there was no like second thoughts about like what the
Yeah,
past.
exactly. Exactly. So whenever those thoughts do pop up, because they do happen, I think everyone's guilty of it. I just ignore it as much as possible and let it go. Because like at the end of the day, it's like what is the difference between being a black belt at 32 and a black belt, whatever, 10 years from now at 42? It's
Yeah.
like what is the difference? Like I'll be older, but I'll still if the black belt was my real goal, then I'd still have it. So
Speaking from like from that kind of perspective, I forget which book I read this in, but it's like a meditative thing where you sit down and you either talk with like meditate on you having like your younger self having a conversation with you, or your older self having conversation with you, and talking from the perspective like clearly, like your older you, like just say 10 years from now, is going to be ideally wiser, smarter, more accomplished, and let's just say they're in your eyes they're going to be successful. It's like being able to ask whatever you visualize that person as being, what advice they would give you in the present moment.
Yeah, that's crazy that you bring that up because I was just talking about this with one of my clients because I look at it from the future looking back to now because I have a vision of who my future self is, and I whenever there are things that I think about doing or I'm hesitant to do, I would ask myself like, what would my future self do? And if is this thing that I'm doing going to lead me to who that man is? My client, on the other hand, thinks back to his younger self. So he looks at it from his inner child. If he's like getting scared to go fight, for example, he's like, how would my inner child want his future self to act? And for him, the answer is always to be brave, to go face the fear. So that's how he looks at it from that perspective. Um, but it definitely works both ways, and it's like an interesting thing
It's a
for
very
sure.
it's a very powerful framework if you really think about it. And then also a lot of athletes, actually a lot of successful people and a lot of athletes really do use this. So like for instance, like if you think of like like one person that comes to mind is like Conor McGregor. It's like if you listen to some of his stuff, like some of the speeches and like stuff that he's done, it's like he visualized his success, or like what his future self, like in a sense, like ideal future self would look like, and how successful they would be, and what they would be able to accomplish before it was even a thing. So he was able to act. He really was able to act in accordance with what his vision was, in order to make that make that a reality. And then another example of this, actually more recent, I was watching a boxing fight for Tyson, Fury,
Usyk.
and Usyk. I mean, undisputed heavyweight fight. The first undisputed in like 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was somebody asked Usyk or something, and he was basically like saying like he saw this moment or saw this fight basically in 2018. He's been prepping for this fight, even though he's had many other fights, and has had to do many other things in that meantime. In his mind, he has had the vision and has been prepping for this fight in order and to win this fight since then.
Yeah, it's crazy because this is like a concept that I learned from Joe Dispenza. He talks about like remembering the future, um, like staying inspired by the future and acting like you already have everything that you wanted, and like putting yourself in that state instead of a state of lack. And the thing is, like, it's crazy when things work out as planned, like that Usyk fight, or when Connor says he's going to be double champ before he was even in the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
But like sometimes it doesn't, and like that's okay because something else along the way will happen. It might not be what you envisioned, but it might be like a even better path for you per se. Um, and what was I going to say?
Well, you know what it is? It's not necessarily like what you were saying. It's not necessarily making that vision come true, which is always great when it does. It's more acting in accordance with
Yeah,
what it takes to accomplish that vision.
yeah,
You,
yeah.
it, it
That's
goes
exactly
back,
what I was going to say.
it goes back
Like,
to the idea that it's not necessarily the work that you do, but what the work does to you. So, like the work that it takes to get to that level, the work to even takes to to get to the fight, to that championship fight, like what the work does to you rather than the work that you do.
Yeah, thank you. 'Cause, you just re-triggered it. That's exactly what I was gonna say. Because like, if you think about it from your future self, whoever that person is obviously a different version of you, but he or she has certain aspects or qualities that you might not believe you have right now, but you can act accordingly. For example, like if you're shy and you wish to become a more confident person, just act like, I mean, it's hard in the beginning, but act like you are very confident in yourself and you don't suffer from social anxiety
You really have
in
to
that
believe
way.
this shit though. Like you really
You
have
do.
to believe it, because if you just, if you just like think of it as like a thought, or like say it as in like affirmation, like a lot of people do nowadays. It's like, oh well, my morning routine, I do my affirmations, I blah blah blah. It's like, but if it's empty words and empty thoughts, it won't make a difference. Like you literally have to live it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it ties everything back that we've been talking about it. Because if you believe it, if you need to see to believe, for example, if you act like, going back to the social anxiety, if you act like you're very confident, like you talk to people in that manner, like eventually you'll get comfortable with it and you'll start noticing yourself being able to speak like fluently in conversations with people without like being in your head and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden you start believing that, oh, maybe I am a confident person and stuff, or like disciplined. If you're disciplined and you're not very disciplined right now, if you start, I don't know, waking up at 6 a.m. every morning, for example, and start doing like little things like on a consistent basis, eventually you'll start doing these habits like you were talking about on autopilot, and you'll start realizing, oh, I'm becoming a more disciplined person. Because that one right there is definitely something I've gone through. Like in my college years, I've always thought of myself as like someone that gave up a little too early, but I never thought about the future self stuff. I just wanted to be more disciplined. As I started to do more things on a consistent basis and act more consistently, now I could say right now I'm a very consistent and disciplined person. So I ended up becoming who I wanted to be, even though I didn't envision it back there. But um, yeah, saying things in your head and thinking it is one thing, but you kind of have to, the acting part, the kinesthetic part. You kind of need that. Um,
It's it's your beliefs have to be supported by your actions. So by you taking the small little steps, or doing like the small little things and then doing those, if you when you couple that with those beliefs, then it kind of creates a reinforcing framework within your mind. Because otherwise, there's cognitive dissonance that goes on there, where it's like, well, you know, you're visualizing yourself as being this healthy person that exercises every single day, but you sit on the couch, watch a TV show, and eat a bag of chips. So it's like, your mind starts thinking like, well, just because I'm telling myself this doesn't mean it's true. But then it's like on the opposite end, where I tell myself I'm a healthy person and I exercise and I make the decision to go for a walk every single day. My mind is going to start being in a sense, my mind's going to start being more convinced that I'm actually that person. Because I'm doing that, it creates a domino effect where I'm going to be doing more things that align with how I see myself.
yeah, that's like a self integrity part that we can even go deeper on probably in the next episode about, because that's a whole different rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And like to the people listening, like we're I'm not talking about faking it till you believe it. I actually don't believe in faking it till you believe it. This is all when you act a certain way, that's supposed to be real. Like, there are people that fake it till they believe it, but their actions don't align, like what you were saying, with their belief. So they never fill the gap and become the person that they're trying to fake it to be.
Yeah.
Like, I think I heard a story of one time of, this is how Jordan Belfort trained his cold callers. Like, he told them to act like they were the richest people in the world, each one of them, and that the people that were speaking to on the other phone had the amount of money that they needed to give them to sell the stocks or whatever, to buy the stocks. And he needed them to act like it, but since they were dialing 800 times a day or whatever, their actions were catching them up to that person they were acting to be.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, some people, they act like it, but then their actions don't support what they're trying to believe in their head.
Yeah. 100%.
All right, we're at the hour 16 mark. I think we could cut it off there and call this an episode. So let me stop this.